F1 fans! Welcome back to the F1 Masters podcast brought to you by AUBG Daily. This time in an unusual two-host format. It's only David and I, because Vasco is not here unfortunately. But in this episode, as the championship fight is kind of still going on in 2025 with 3 races to go, we decided to do an episode on the best title deciders in F1 history, and there have been quite a few throughout the years. I managed to find like a lot when I was researching, so maybe we can start with the most recent one. And David, do you want to present it?
Yeah, so we'll start off with the infamous Abu Dhabi 2021 Verstappen versus Hamilton. Pretty much the title fight, you could say, of like that defines modern F1. Equal on points going into the last race. Lewis Hamilton, who is looking to break Michael Schumacher's record of getting 8 world championships, something no one has ever done, and Max Verstappen, who is by then really established himself as the future of F1, trying to finally win his first championship. And yeah, this season, the whole season was really incredible. You know, of course, there were famous crashes in Silverstone and Monza, battling out for first place constantly. They got most of the wins throughout the entire season. And we went down to Abu Dhabi, as you said, tied on points. And it was really anyone's game. Lewis, actually going into the race, was on really strong form. He had won 3 races in a row. So it really looked like Lewis might have the edge, but Verstappen kind of shocked him and took pole position. And that was a bit surprising, but from the very start of the race, Lewis took the lead and almost never looked back for quite a while in that race.
Yeah, actually, I remember when they almost crashed in, I think it was turn 7, like after the long straight.
Yeah.
When Hamilton just decided to, go out of the track and then rejoined, kind of like at least 2 seconds ahead of Verstappen, and there were, people were saying that he deserves a penalty, but he actually didn't get a penalty because he was it was deemed that he was ahead of Verstappen in the corner. And after that, Lewis was pretty much dominating the whole race. Like, he was just comfortably at least 10 or 15 seconds ahead, I remember. And, the pit stops were great. He didn't have any problems with that. Verstappen was just struggling, he was he second, or I think he was?
After the pit stops, they were second and third because Sergio Perez was yet to make his stop. And then, of course, he had one of the greatest battles, one of the greatest defensive masterclasses I've ever seen in my life. Just held up Lewis. I think, honestly, I don't even know how much time he lost. I think he lost 8 seconds in 1 lap or something. Yeah. He held him up so much. Verstappen was nowhere, and then on the previous lap and then afterwards, you can see him in the background on the straight, and it was quite unbelievable what Perez did, and Verstappen had caught up to him. But even still, even after this crazy battle with Perez and Hamilton, Lewis after that once again just started pulling away, and he looked set to get that 8th championship.
Yeah, I remember the Mexican Minister of Defense, it was unbelievable by Checo, but yeah, I mean, the turning point in the race came after Nicolas Latifi's crash. We all remember what happened. It was just, he bended in the wall, and then a safety car was brought out, and Lewis didn't pit. Max pitted for new soft tires, and after that they were behind the safety car, and we remember the team radio communication between Christian Horner, Toto Wolff, Michael Masi, and at first Michael Masi said no lapped cars will be allowed to overtake, but 2 laps later he just said only the cars which are placed between Hamilton and Verstappen are allowed to overtake. One of the most controversial decisions ever in F1 history. I mean, you can say what you think.
Yeah, and also apart from this ridiculous decision, in my opinion, they did not follow a protocol about when the safety car should come in, because the cars, they needed to wait for them to rejoin the queue because they just unlapped themselves, right?
Yeah.
But they were no safety car ending this lap.
And the cars were on the other side of the track.
Yeah,
right.
And it was the last lap because they wanted to restart.
Yeah, they wanted the title showdown in the last lap.
Yeah, it's called a motor race, Toto. So.
Yeah, we all remember, no, Mikey, no, this is so not right.
Yeah, just so much drama. And so,
Just to summarize what happened on the last lap.
Yeah, and what happened, to no one's surprise, Max Verstappen on the brand new tires overtook Lewis, and Lewis tried to fight it as much as he could, but he did not have the tires to compete with that. And Max Verstappen ended up winning his first championship in the most controversial fashion, you could say. But yeah, I mean, overall, great. I'm generally great title decider. I would say it really left a sour taste, the ending. Although I went crazy watching that, I screamed. I woke up all the neighbors around me. But yeah, the controversy and the incorrect decision making from the FIA leaves the sour taste in my mouth.
But okay, let's considering the whole 2021 season, who do you think deserved the title more?
I mean, I do think Verstappen deserved it. He just performed, I felt like, better throughout the season, made less mistakes. And yeah, I think Lewis was great, but I think Max Verstappen was very impressive, even though I don't think the way he won it was the proper way. I still think, he's a deserved champion of that year.
Yeah, that's fair point, but I still think that it was like really equally matched.
It was, yeah.
Whoever got the title deserved it, even though the way that Verstappen earned this title was really, as you said, like left a sour taste, especially for us Mercedes fans. But
yeah. We can move on to another race, which actually, unlike 2021, it did finish behind the safety car like normal protocol is. That is the 2012 Brazilian Grand Prix, aka Sebastian Vettel versus Fernando Alonso. Well, this is, in my opinion, the greatest season in F1 history. And although the Vettel led the championship by 13 points going into the last race, it was not that smooth sailing for him, especially on lap 1 as Bruno Senna made contact with him and Vettel spun, got damaged, and was left at the back of the field.
Yeah, it was a crazy start. Also, the weather conditions played a big role because it was not that wet, but it was kind of not dry enough. It was like really damp conditions. It was, and the drivers were making a lot of mistakes in turn 1, and after that it was turn 3 where Senna spun Vettel, and it was he ended up 22nd after lap 1, and Alonso was actually running 4th in the majority of the first laps.
Alonso, he actually started behind Vettel, but he made a great start, and he was running in 4th, and then of course the incredible double overtake on Massa and Webber, and people were really thinking, oh my God, Alonso, he's gonna win the championship essentially, but he still needed more places, and he got a huge help by Hulkenberg and Hamilton, who were fighting for the win. Hulkenberg in the Force India, by the way. And they crashed, both of them. Lewis was out, Hulk dropped a lot of places, and Fernando was up to 2nd. And this was great, because that's 18 points, obviously. But Sebastian Vettel, he was making a lot of progress, even though he had big damage. And he had this pit stop where the crew wasn't ready. From what I understood, he had lost his team radio connection, so they couldn't communicate. So he just came into the pits, and they were unprepared as they had no communication about this. But even after this, we also had Alonso. He did like this incredible save. I don't know if you remember on turn 3, the long left-hander, where he almost crashed and ruined his whole race. So it was a very dramatic race, but Vettel, he charged through the field and was making up places, and he needed to finish 7th to win the championship, as Alonso was in 2nd. But he even got some bonus help after Michael Schumacher gave him a helping hand and gave him 6th place as well.
Yeah, Michael Schumacher, being his last race ever in F1, he just decided to help his fellow German driver, and he let him pass for 6th. And Vettel managed to win. And as you said, at the end there was a safety car because Paul Di Resta binned it at the penultimate corner.
Yeah.
And the race finished in a dramatic way, even though the safety car was not as dramatic as Abu Dhabi 21. But also we have to say that after the race there was an investigation for Vettel for him overtaking Jean-Eric Verne under yellow flags. But after the stewards looked into it, the pass was later declared legal, and Ferrari were also fine with the decision. They didn't protest. So
it's crazy for Ferrari that they were fine and not to protest. Then Sebastian Vettel ended up winning the championship by 3 points. Quite Dramatic season, obviously, and Fernando Alonso, he actually led the championship for quite a while, and he really fell off at the last portion. Like Vettel really began picking up the pace, started winning a lot of races, and this is actually considered by many people as Fernando Alonso's greatest season, considering the Ferrari's lack of pace that year. So, do you think maybe Fernando Alonso deserved this championship over Sebastian Vettel?
Yeah, because as you said, the Ferrari was not that competitive to the Red Bull, but still, Fernando managed to extract everything from this car. And I mean, yeah, he made mistakes sometimes probably, but still, like he was almost constantly performing at the highest level possible.
Yeah, I always remember the meme that it is nowadays after he got out of his car and he's just death staring into Sebastian Vettel as he celebrates his championship. He can't believe that he managed to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah, great season. Highly recommend. And this race especially was a very, very nice title decider. So yeah. Next, another Brazilian Grand Prix. It's almost as if this is the greatest title decider racetrack in history. I wish they still did it. But yeah, we have 2008 this time, aka Lewis Hamilton versus Felipe Massa, which technically to this day is still undecided.
Yeah, well, we have heard, probably all F1 fans have heard about Felipe Massa's lawsuit against the FIA because he still believes that he was like unfairly, the championship should have been his, but
Yeah.
we can talk about this later. Let's focus on the race now. And as you said, another title decider in the last race in Brazil after 2007's freeway fight, which was also incredible. And Hamilton actually had a 7-point lead going into Brazil. And both of them were fighting for their first championship. It's important to mention.
And also, this is the old point system, so their first place gets 10 points. So 7-point lead is actually pretty significant lead going into the last race.
Hamilton needed the 5th place in order to win the championship.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't have a really great qualifying. He managed to only get P4, while Massa took pole position in his home Grand Prix. And after the race starts, pretty much nothing much was happening for both of them. Like Hamilton was fourth for the majority of the race, but then, like towards the end of the race, rain started falling, and he decided to pit, not to risk it. And some drivers behind him actually stayed out and overtook him, and this is when the drama began.
Yeah, basically the whole race was this cloudy kind of weather, and it was kind of going as normal. Like Massa was leading from start to finish. Lewis, even though he was fourth, but that was fine for him. Like he just needed a top 5 finish. But yeah, the rain started falling. They started making pit stops. And the only one that didn't make a pit stop in the front was Timo Glock, who did jump Lewis. So Lewis was now down to 5th place. But then with 2 laps to go, Lewis ran wide, made a mistake, and young Sebastian Vettel, his first full season in F1, he overtakes Lewis, and Lewis all of a sudden, out of nowhere, is in 6th place, and he's not in the championship position, even though he had been for the whole race. And so this panic happens, and I remember how the camera really goes back and forth with the McLaren and the Ferrari garages, just everyone on edge, like who is gonna win the championship, and they keep going and nothing is happening. Lewis cannot overtake Seb. He's trying as much as he can, but he just can't get close enough. And Massa takes the win, and Ferrari, they're ecstatic because he's won the championship. Or has he? Because is that Glock on the final corner? It is. And Timo Glock on the dry tires no longer can hold it on the track. Like he's driving super slowly just to make it to the finish. And Lewis catches up on the last lap because it starts raining very hard. And he comes down the inside of Timo Glock and he's back into 5th position. And on the last lap, on the last corner of the race, he takes back the championship and wins his first ever championship and denies Massa of ever getting a championship in F1.
Yeah, unbelievable. This was also Massa's last win in F1 actually, which is a pretty sad statistic, but yeah, this is usually what happens in the movies, not in real life F1. Like to win the championship in the last corner of the last race of the season. Unbelievable scenes, and this was for the first of Hamilton's many championships, 7. So it was a special moment for him, and I mean, it's gonna be remembered for a long time.
Yeah, and until 2021, like this was like the benchmark, like the peak of title deciding drama. Like it was so unbelievable and quite impressively, no safety cars during this entire race. Everything happened naturally, which I think like makes it like even more special in a way. So yeah, great title decider. Highly recommend checking out. If you haven't, I believe there are like full versions on YouTube, especially of the final laps. So
Yeah,
you
they
can,
posted like recently,
yeah,
like the F1 YouTube.
it's one of the most famous races in F1 history. So yeah, highly recommend that. And yeah, our final main one that we're gonna go for is actually much older than these previous ones, and that is Adelaide 1986, the title fight between Nigel Mansell, Alain Prost, and Nelson Piquet.
Yeah, going into the final race, this is actually the old point system we have to mention. Mansell had 70 points, which was 6 more than Prost and 7 more than Piquet, so he was like having, let's say, a comfortable lead, but not enough. And considering the whole season, Williams had the faster car, but its two drivers sometimes, crashed and they lost points. And Prost managed to stay consistent with his McLaren, and he was like really close, as we can see. He was actually splitting them going to the final race, and in qualifying, Mansell and Piquet occupied the first row while Prost was fourth, I think behind Ayrton Senna. And yeah, in the race start, it was pretty dynamic. We actually watched it right before recording here. So Mansell dropped some positions. Ayrton Senna came out of nowhere and got P1, and it was a crazy start. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a Williams front row rocket. Blah, blah, blah. It was a Williams front row lockout. There we go. And I think everyone thought Nigel Mansell was gonna win this championship. I mean, sorry, you said no, 6 points ahead of Prost, 7 points ahead of Piquet. It's 9 points for a win. So basically, Nigel Mansell just needs to finish in the points pretty much, and he is absolutely fine with winning the championship. And he even started on pole. So how does Nigel Mansell possibly lose this championship? Well, we're about to find out because he did not win this championship. As you mentioned, he did drop a few positions, and yeah, it was Senna in the lead. Prost, he had his own issues. He had a puncture. Nelson Piquet spun. So both of them were running in championship, potential positions. Although they did need to win the race, and Senna was in front of them. But Senna eventually retired from the race, so they were fighting for the win at that point. But after their issues, Nigel Mansell took over the lead, and Nigel Mansell is set for winning the championship. But on lap 63, his tire explodes, and it is so dramatic that sparks go flying. His car basically tilts sideways, and I think his suspension breaks pretty much. That's how severe it was. And yeah, he spins and he's out of the race out of nowhere. And yeah, these tires were such a concern that drivers began pitting for like precautionary measures. And someone that did that was Nelson Piquet, as he saw that happen to his teammate, same machinery, so the team was worried that it would happen to him. Alain Prost did not do this, however, and took over the lead, and Nelson Piquet couldn't catch up, so Alain Prost managed to win the race, and as a result, take the championship, 2 points ahead of Nigel Mansell and 3 points ahead of Nelson Piquet.
Yeah, what makes this even more interesting is that 3 drivers were involved in this fight, and it was really on the edge until the, let's say, last few laps. But yeah, Mansell's incident was really weird, even though back then like the tires were also different, like the reliability. But what is important is that he didn't crash into anything, so he managed to avoid crashing into something, and he somehow kept the car out of the barriers. So, but yeah, really impressive by Alain Prost, considering, as I said, that his car was like not as fast as the Williams. It was quite not on par with them, but because of his consistency, he managed to win the championship.
Yeah, I mean, just for reference, KK Rosberg, who was his teammate during this season, he finished 6th in the championship, and he's a world champion. So Alain Prost really performed to high degree, consistent performances, which is what he's really renowned for. But yeah, Nigel Mansell, just heartbreak for him, as he would also continue to experience until his eventual championship in 1992. But this one definitely stung, and I can't even imagine like this in this day and age. Like, let's say like, I don't know, Lando Norris has like a 20-point lead over Oscar Piastri, Max Verstappen, and somehow he were to lose the championship in the last round. I would find that quite outstanding and unbelievable.
Yeah.
So
Also considering that he hadn't won a championship by that point.
yeah. So great title decider where all three people were running in a championship position at one point also. So very dramatic and very unclear who would eventually win it. So yeah, highly recommend checking this race out, especially even any kind of F1 fan, because it's very old before our time. So yeah, it's a very good one. So yeah, those were our main, we believe, the best title deciders in F1 history. Now for some honorable mentions, and we can start with Abu Dhabi 2010.
Yeah, it is more of the more recent ones, let's say, 15 years ago. And it actually involved 4 people who had a mathematical chance of winning the championship, which...
Only time in F1 history.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. We're talking about Sebastian Vettel, Fernando Alonso, Mark Webber, and Lewis Hamilton, even though Hamilton was really like...
Well, he
really
was 24 points behind, and with a maximum of 25 points available, he needed a miracle to win it, but he still had a mathematical chance.
Yeah, let's say. But yeah, it was this race was famous for like Vitaly Petrov and him holding Fernando Alonso behind, as Sebastian Vettel managed to clinch his first world championship in let's say, actually he was really impressive in that race. He won it.
He led the entire race.
Yeah, really dominant fashion. So young Sebastian Vettel, 23 years old, and getting his first world championship. Yeah, like first of 4 consecutive ones, and this race just proved that Vettel can be a dominant driver in the next few years.
Yeah, and also interestingly, he never led the championship after any race throughout the entire year until the last round of the season, which was quite poetic and kind of shows the choke job Fernando Alonso and Mark Webber really did at the end of the season.
Especially Mark Webber, honestly.
Yeah.
Like considering also the Korean Grand Prix when he just made a stupid mistake. Actually, let's see if Oscar Piastri, like his form in 2025 at the end of the season, if we can, like after the season ends, we can compare it to Mark Webber's, his manager's choke.
Yes.
So,
I mean, the season's not over, so we never know, but that was Mark Webber's 2010 season in a nutshell. Our next honorable mention is, it was already mentioned earlier, Brazil 2007, the year before the 2008 one. The 3-way title fight, Raikkonen, Hamilton, Alonso. Very, I would say, not as interesting as the 2008 race, although it was still quite dramatic. Lewis Hamilton, who had been the favorite as a rookie throughout the entire season pretty much to win the championship, had huge reliability issues during this race and just couldn't recover enough to clinch the championship. Kimi Raikkonen was down, I remember 17 points out of a possible 20 going into the last 2 races, and he managed to win both of those races. Lewis and Alonso struggled with issues, of course, Lewis Hamilton's famous China incident, but in this race, Lewis had big reliability issues. Fernando just was not on the pace of the Ferraris, who had a 1-2 throughout the entire race, and Kimi dominated, and he clinched the championship by 1 point ahead of Lewis and Fernando, who their beef throughout the year severely, and along with Spygate, really affected, I felt like, the team dynamic at McLaren, which allowed for Kimi to clinch this one.
Yeah, actually, this reminds me of, as we spoke about 1986, like the 2 drivers from the dominant team, and then the third one who just stays consistent, especially at the end of the season, and manages to clinch the title. I mean, Kimi Raikkonen, very impressive. He managed to use that beef that they had in the team in McLaren to his, just managed to, utilize it fully and win this championship. And
the calm guy that he is, he never really felt like super under pressure. So,
but we have to mention this is the last drivers' championship for Ferrari until this day.
To this day,
yeah,
18 years it's been. Okay.
Yeah, let's move on to Actually, it also involves Ferrari, but it's Jerez 1997. It's Michael Schumacher versus Jacques Villeneuve. And yeah, do you want to talk about
Yeah, I mean, this race obviously very back and forth season. Which, fun fact, Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve never actually shared the podium together throughout the season. Super random fact. How are they in a championship fight? I don't know. But here we are coming into Jerez, and actually qualifying was very memorable as Villeneuve, Schumacher, and Heinz Harald Frentzen set the exact same time down to the thousandth, which is the only time in F1 history like three drivers for pole position have set the exact same time. So this is quite an anomaly, very in unique way to start the weekend. But yeah, in the race, Jacques Villeneuve is leading, Michael Schumacher is second. Pretty much everything is going as normal. But Michael Schumacher, no wait, I'm sorry. Michael Schumacher took the lead at the start. Jacques Villeneuve was behind him, and Jacques Villeneuve then, a few laps into the race, attacks Michael Schumacher down the inside. And Michael Schumacher tries to do what he did in 1994, which is actually not in our honorable mentions, but the incident with Damon Hill, where he just turns into him and takes both of them out of the race, and he wins the championship. And Michael Schumacher, going into this race, was leading the championship, so he thought he could do the same as well. But he was actually too late to the turn in, and Jacques Villeneuve, already comfortable on inside, just does not budge whatsoever. And Michael Schumacher is actually the one sent into the gravel, and his car gets beached. And Martin Brundle, actually, the commentator, said that didn't work, Michael, my friend. You know, he hit the wrong part of his car. And so, yeah, Michael Schumacher's out of the race. Jacques Villeneuve, after knowing this, he just needed to cruise pretty much to get the championship, and he didn't even win the race. Actually finished third, but it was still enough for him to win the championship. And after the race, Michael Schumacher obviously found to do something intentional to take him out, was disqualified from the championship, which in my opinion totally justified. And yeah, kind of a sour end to the championship, but in the end, yeah, I think Jacques Villeneuve deserved it considering Michael Schumacher's behavior.
Yeah, even though he's one of the more, let's say, from the weaker F1 champions, he's not that, he was not that impressive considering other like dominant drivers. Let's say even Michael Schumacher, when comparing the two of them, like there is no basis for comparison, let's say. But we also mentioned the 1994 season finale in Adelaide again, and this time it was involving Damon Hill, another Williams driver. But yeah, Michael, I think after these two instances, he learned, how to fight for a championship in a cleaner way, let's say.
Yeah, he definitely improved that and learned a lot, I think, from these two title fights. But yeah, next we have Fuji 1976.
Yeah, this is for those of you who have watched the movie Rush. This is a pretty probably a well-known one, and it involves, of course, Niki Lauda and James Hunt. And we're all aware of the story of Niki Lauda's season after that crash in Nürburgring. He managed to come back after only a month of recovery, and yeah, it was. I think they were separated by a few points coming into the last race, and
yeah, Lauda was still leading.
He was still leading, yeah. And then before the race, it was there were talks about whether the race should be even held because the weather was horrible. It was like raining a lot. It was really, really heavy weather, not very suitable for a race, but still the decision was made and the race was held. And Niki Lauda, he started the race, but then after a few laps, he just decided to withdraw. He went into the pits and told his team, I can't do this, I can't risk it, because he already endured a huge crash earlier that season. But James Hunt continued.
Yeah, James Hunt continued in the treacherous rain. It was really quite a nightmare in Fuji. And, he struggled. He was running in about he was in the points positions, but he needed to get up to third. And in the last few laps, he received a puncture, which kind of set him back. But he managed to make some overtakes. Got past the likes of Ronnie Peterson, Alan Jones, and yeah, he got up to third place, which was exactly what he needed to clinch the championship by 1 point. Once again, even though he didn't lead the championship the entire season, it was Niki Lauda. The mixture of Niki Lauda, crash, in the absences of races, allowed for James Hunt to sneak in, and even though he still had a great season, managed to squeak the championship, even though Niki Lauda was definitely the far better driver.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, considering the whole season and his consistency in the races in which he participated,
Yeah.
and also his overall ability, his career.
Mhm.
He's a three-time world champion.
Yeah.
He managed to win the 1984 championship by half a point. Yeah, we
Yeah.
have to mention that.
Niki Lauda was definitely a high performer, and if he didn't have his crash, I think would have won this championship quite comfortably, actually. And no one would have even known who James Hunt is, but
Yeah.
James Hunt still respect for getting this title. Very difficult comeback, and actually like converted by today's point system, the biggest comeback in history. So well done to him. And our final honorable mention is actually one that is not very famous at all, but it's actually Watkins Glen 1974 between Emerson Fittipaldi and Clay Regazzoni.
Yeah, it's really interesting because going into the final race, this is the only other instance other than 2021 when the two drivers were equal on points going into the final race. And yeah, it was like Fittipaldi versus Regazzoni. Fittipaldi already had won a title in 72, while Regazzoni was fighting for his first one. And actually the pole position was taken by Carlos Reutemann in the Brabham Ford, which is interesting. And then he also managed to win the race, while the title contenders were actually struggling in the race. None of them even was on the podium, as Carlos Pace and James Hunt completed the podium positions. James Hunt in the Heskett, we have to mention.
Yeah.
Impressive again. But yeah, I mean, as far as I know, like Fittipaldi just managed to, cruise into the points positions and take the championship. It was not like that much of a dramatic title decider, as they were not fighting for the win, not fighting for any good points positions. But yeah, I mean, still.
Yeah, I mean, to go over some of the things that happened. Also, you mentioned James Hunt in the Heskett. Carlos Pace was third in a Surtees, which is
Yeah.
the most random teams in F1 history. Actually, Fittipaldi and Regazzoni had both awful qualifyings. They were 8th and 9th on the grid. And Lauda was actually trying to help Regazzoni as they were teammates and trying to hold up Scheckter and Fittipaldi, but Regazzoni had a lot of issues with the handling of his car, and he pit twice and nothing was working, even new tires, and eventually he just could not even recover to the points, whereas Fittipaldi, after some retirements from cars ahead, got up to 4th, and he didn't have any spectacular race, but he was in the points, and Regazzoni wasn't, which was what Fittipaldi needed to win the championship. So yeah, a very, very close season, actually. I wasn't even really familiar with it until we reviewed it for this episode. But yeah, Fittipaldi managed to win it. And actually, this was McLaren's first ever championship, we have to mention. So,
yeah, because his first one was with Lotus. Right?
Yeah, so this was actually quite a historic moment. And now today, we might have not today, but this year, we might see a new McLaren world champion. So yeah, 51 years later, and McLaren are still fighting for championships. So yeah, interesting race. Check it out if you haven't seen it. I certainly will, as I would love to see more about this race. And yeah, those were pretty much the title deciders that we wanted to go over. Let us know which ones you think are the best, or one that we didn't mention in this episode. But this is all for today from us. We're looking forward to the next episode. Till then, like, subscribe, and follow us in AUBG Daily on Instagram and Facebook. And stay tuned for more of our content. Thank you. And remember,
if you no longer go for a gap that exists,
you're no longer a racing driver.